Welcome to See Crime Stories, true stories of the missing and the pursuit of answers. July 24th, 1997, Lander, Wyoming. By 1 a.m., a white Toyota Tercel sits unlocked at a gravel pullout called Burnt Gulch on the loop road. Inside, keys, a handwritten to-do list, and sunglasses. Missing, a green wallet, and 24-year-old runner Amy Bechtel. There's no blood, no obvious struggle, and no footprints worth following. Within hours, hundreds of searchers sweep timber, drainages, and lakes. This isn't a crime scene the way TV imagines it. It's a vanish point. The working question is simple: who reached it first, Amy, or someone watching her? The first hours are procedural. Deputies secure the vehicle, log its position, and limit contact to preserve anything that might later be testable. The car being unlocked is recorded, not interpreted. Items inside are photographed and listed. The missing wallet is flagged as unknown significance because in outdoor disappearances the absence of a single personal item can mean many things, from routine carry to the start of something criminal. This is how an investigation stays disciplined when the ground offers almost nothing. What can be fixed in time is the day before the discovery. Amy taught a fitness class, ran errands in town, stopped at a photo/printing shop regarding a contest, and planned to scout a 10K route on Loop Road. Those details matter because they explain why her car is at Burnt Gulch without inventing a confrontation there. The terrain above Lander is vast, busy in summer, and unforgiving of clean narratives. Dust, wind, and normal traffic erase tracks. If you're looking for a single set of prints that says this way, the shoulder won't give it to you. Search expands from the vehicle in concentric sectors: ground teams with radios, dog units when available, aerial passes where canopy allows. Volunteers are briefed to report but not touch. False leads appear, routine in cases like this, and are documented, cleared, and archived. In towns like Lander, disappearances don't just trouble families, they pressure the whole system: dispatchers, pilots, civic groups, climbers, runners, everyone who knows how far Loop Road can stretch a mistake. The home is checked for itinerary notes, running logs, or anything that tightens the clock. Friends supply call times. The simple fact that her car is found before dawn on July 25th lets investigators bracket a window between the last verified contact in town and the discovery at Burnt Gulch. The narrower that window, the fewer roads and turnouts to consider. The data lines up cleanly. Sometimes that's the problem: clean lines in a messy landscape can tempt people to overreach. Here, restraint is policy. No body has been found. No confirmed crime scene exists. The case moves forward on what can be proved: a car, a place, a timetable. If you lived there in 1997, you remember how quickly the forest filled with people. Everyone had a theory. The file can't run on theories. It runs on logs, distances, fuel, and the last verifiable choices of a young athlete who knew those roads better than most. What detail at the vehicle site do you think matters most: the unlocked doors, the items left behind, or the choice of that specific turnout? On paper, July 24th, 1997 starts with routine. In Lander, Wyoming, Amy Bechtel teaches a morning fitness class, chats with people who know her schedule, and moves through town on small errands. She stops at a local photo/printing counter to ask about a contest. She talks about scouting a 10K course up on the Loop Road later that day. Nothing in those contacts suggests fear, argument, or a plan to meet anyone unexpected. When we reconstruct missing person cases, days like this matter because they anchor time. Routine narrows the window. Investigators retrace each stop using what was available in 1997, staff memories, handwritten notes, and any dated receipts that survived. Calls are checked on home and business landlines. Friends confirm the class time, the errand talk, and the plan to head into the forest to mark distances for a race route. In towns like Lander, people notice who comes and goes. Several do. That gives the case a verified sequence from morning into early afternoon without guessing. The goal is simple: lock the clock before the road begins. Drive time from town to turnouts along the loop road depends on where you're headed and how far you go once you're up there. Even without exact timestamps, the window from Amy's last verified contact in town to the discovery of her car after midnight is finite. The smaller that window, the fewer viable turnouts. The more certain we are about the last in-town moment, the more honest the search radius becomes. The data aligned too cleanly. Sometimes that was the problem. When sequences look neat, people rush to fill the gap with stories. This file doesn't do that. It follows what can be proved. The to-do list in her car will become a point of debate later. For now, it functions like any note, a snapshot of intent. Items on a runner's list, class, errands, scouting a route, fit the day we can verify. Sunglasses and keys inside, door unlocked, wallet missing. None of those facts on their own tells investigators whether she planned a quick jog from that turnout or whether something intervened before she could start. In a forested system used by locals and tourists, the baseline level of noise is high. Park, lock or don't, jog a segment, return. Many people do exactly that and go home. One person doesn't. Witness interviews lift a few details above rumor. Amy is focused on the race plan. She is not described as distracted, upset, or in conflict as she moves between stops. No one reports her meeting a stranger. No staff member calls in a confrontation. The story emerging from town is clear and steady: a healthy 24-year-old athlete finishing morning business and intending to run in the place she knows best. If this were a different kind of case, the town sequence might advertise a fight, a threat, or a tale. Here, it doesn't. Her home life is noted without conclusion. She's married. Her husband is away climbing that day with friends near Du Bois. That detail is logged because timelines have to touch. It is not a verdict, it is a box on a chart. In any U.S. missing person case, investigators check partners first because odds and access demand it. Doing that work is not bias, it's standard. The file makes room for that scrutiny while the town timeline continues to set the pace. By late afternoon, calls begin to miss. Messages sit. People who expect quick responses from Amy don't get them. That change, silence after regular contact, marks the investigative pivot. The in-town portion of the day has ended. She should be finishing a run, refueling, or home. She is not. Lander is the kind of place that mobilizes quickly when a runner doesn't return. Search requests start. Volunteers organize. The clock from town to turnout is the only honest map they have. There's a human side to this that doesn't need flourish to land. Routines are the rails most of us run on. When a routine stops abruptly in open country, families learn how wide a county can feel and how long an evening can get. A measured investigation keeps them from being crushed by guesses. It keeps today's search from wandering because of yesterday's rumor. For viewers who've lived in small towns, the pattern is familiar. People remember faces and times, but they also respect privacy. That's why the town sequence matters. It produces corroboration without spectacle. It lets the case move forward on verifiable steps, not on imagined detours. Every minute we can place Amy in Lander reduces the minutes we have to explain in the hills. If you're watching with the case file in mind, what would you prioritize next? Expanding the drive time analysis to specific turnouts, or interviewing additional store employees to lock the final in-town timestamp by the minute? The turnout where Amy's white Toyota Tercel is found is small, angled, and practical. Drivers use it to step out, stretch, check a map, or run a short out and back. That's the scale of Burnt Gulch, no drama in the gravel, just a place to pause. Investigators treat it exactly that way, a vehicle discovery point, not a confirmed crime scene. The distinction matters because it limits what you claim and it protects what you can test later. You log the coordinates, you photograph the car in situ, and you collect the basics without announcing a theory you can't support. The first pass is procedural. Tire impressions around the pullout are documented where possible, knowing the surface is mixed and often traveled. If you see a clear tread that isn't the Toyota's, you mark direction and relative position. If you can't preserve it, you at least capture a scale photo. Door status, window position, and ignition details are captured and then left alone. The interior is photographed corner to corner before anything is touched. Items in view are recorded, a list with the day's jobs, personal effects that match a runner's routine. None of that proves what happened next. It tells you what was there when the car was found and nothing more. Search teams work the terrain as a grid radiating from the turnout. It isn't a guess, it's basic containment. If someone left on foot intending to run a short segment, a 2-hour sweep should catch a voice, a footprint in softer shoulder, or a sighting near a landmark. That doesn't happen. The silence doesn't prove abduction, it proves the grid didn't intersect with Amy. In the file, you don't write she wasn't here. You write no contact in primary grid and expand your radius. Rangers and deputies compare the pullout to others within the reasonable drive window from Amy's last verified movement in town. Burnt Gulch fits, but so do a handful of other turnouts. That analysis prevents what investigators call tunnel vision, falling in love with the first location because it's tangible. In outdoors cases, the first tangible thing often becomes the whole story. Here, discipline keeps it a waypoint, not the destination. The team reviews traffic patterns, whether the site is popular with local runners, and how far a typical training segment might reach before the loop back. The unlocked status of the car is a fact, not a plot point. Plenty of people in the late 1990s left vehicles unlocked during short stops on public land. Investigators log it and move on. What carries more weight is the timing. The car is discovered just after 1 a.m., July 25th. That timestamp gives the case something solid when the public footprint begins. From that minute forward, chain of custody is logged, access is controlled, and every action near the Toyota is recorded. Before that minute, the file is a partial clock made from witness recollection and reasonable travel time. Night work at Burnt Gulch is short. You don't stride around a sparse turnout in the dark and call it cleared. The goal is to fix the scene and return with first light and enough personnel to do it properly. Morning brings another round of photos, a second look at the shoulder edges, and a walk-off of nearby spurs where a runner might warm up or cool down. Dog teams sweep, but scent and dry, high-traffic roadside is fragile. If a handler calls a possible trail, it's logged, then tested again before the search commits in that direction. Reliable cases are built from consistency, not from first passes. There's also the question every viewer asks, if the car is here, why don't we know where she went? The answer is uncomfortable but honest. Turnouts are bus stops without a schedule. People step in and out all day, residents, tourists, crews, and almost none of them leave a record. A single car in a legal pullout says somebody arrived. It doesn't say who left, when, or with whom. That is why investigators push just as hard on the in-town clock as they do on the hillside. The road is the bridge between them. Neighbors of the forest get pulled in fast. A trail crew recalls what they saw in the afternoon. A fisherman remembers 2 vehicles idling near a bend. A family returning from a picnic notes a jogger moving uphill. Each account is timestamped as best as the person can manage and placed on a simple map. The map shows a busy summer day, not a single red line pointing to Burnt Gulch. That's normal. It also explains why the car alone cannot carry the case. From a human point of view, this is the hardest kind of start for a family. A car at a turnout gives hope. She stepped away for a quick run, and dread, someone else used the car as a prop. The investigation's job is to keep both ideas at arm's length while the facts catch up. In towns like Lander, people want action, investigators want accuracy. You can't trade one for the other and still claim you're after the truth. The plan that comes out of this day is sober. Keep Burnt Gulch secure for as long as is reasonable, expand the grid, and work the drive time math. If the turnout can't tell you who left in which direction, the clock might. That is how you move a roadside discovery toward an answer, one bounded step at a time. Dawn breaks on the loop road with a plan, not a hunch. Fremont County sets a simple command post, one map, one clock, clear sectors. Teams work outward from Burnt Gulch while a parallel crew back in Lander tightens the in-town window we established earlier. The rule is basic: capture what is verifiable, move on what is actionable, and document every negative result so you don't waste the same hour twice. Ground searchers take the first mile in overlapping sweeps, shoulder edges, drainage mouths, social paths that locals use to cut between turnouts. Radios stay short: sector, direction, status. Where the soil softens, boots pause long enough for photos, then flag tape marks anything ambiguous for a second look. You do not chase shapes in gravel. You either have impressions worth measuring or you don't. By mid-morning, air support is up when weather allows. A helicopter rides the road line and lockshores, banking long enough to scan for clothing color contrasts or fresh slides on steep cut banks. The camera work is steady, wide to narrow, then logged by time so analytics later can marry the footage to ground notes. On the water, teams check obvious catch points, coves, log jams, inlets where floating debris collects. In cases without a confirmed struggle, you still clear water early because it closes one category of risk and lets the search pivot without second guessing. If sonar is available, operators run quick lanes on the larger bodies. If not, you lean on shore scans and visibility. Every no find is entered with coordinates. That matters as much as a discovery because it governs where you send your next 12 people instead of your next 2. The dog units arrive with expectations set correctly. Roadside scent in dry conditions is fragile and easily contaminated. Handlers work silent, letting the dogs declare interest before anyone reads meaning into it. A possible direction gets logged. If it repeats across teams or times of day, the incident commander can commit. Today, it doesn't repeat. That is not a failure, it's information. It tells you the turnout isn't offering a dependable trail to chase, which puts more weight back on drive time math and witness calls. Back in town, investigators push the timeline to the minute. The last verified contacts, the errands, the stated plan to scout a 10K segment, each detail narrows the plausible departure window for the loop road. When your car is found at 1 a.m., the span between the last town timestamp and that discovery becomes your real battlefield. If you can shave 15 minutes off that window by corroborating one more store memory or phone note, you knock out a handful of far turnouts and prevent 2 days of wasted grid work. In small communities, people do their best to recall faces and times. You thank them, you cross-check, and you only lock what matches something else. Tips arrive fast. A fisherman saw runners earlier in the afternoon up near another pullout. A crew truck passed a compact car that might match the Toyota, can't swear to the plate. A family coming down before dusk remembers a woman on an uphill segment but can't fix the location beyond near a bend with a view. Each tip is triaged, Is it within the town to turnout window? Is it compatible with the vehicle's location? And does it reference a distinct landmark that can be revisited? The point isn't to collect stories, it's to convert the few solid ones into ground truth you can test. Through the first night cycle, the command post tracks fatigue. A tired line makes mistakes, steps over small items, repeats a cleared sector, or confuses time. So the board shows who cleared what, when, and which sector is truly cold. A liaison keeps the family informed without overpromising. This is where the human part matters. People want certainty. Good searches deliver clarity first. In towns like Lander, that distinction preserves trust. We will tell you exactly what we did today, and we won't claim more than that. By the end of the first 48, the ledger is honest. No confirmed track away from the car. No recovery in nearby water. No sighting in the active grids that meets the standard for corroboration. The absence of contact in sectors that should have produced a voice or a view, if this were a routine out and back, pushes investigators to consider movements not accounted for by a solo run. That is not a leap to a suspect, it's a pivot in search logic. When the primary hypothesis doesn't generate evidence, you open the next door. Here is the quiet line in the log that matters. Vehicle discovery documented. Sector grids A, D, no contact. Water checks at adjacent points, negative. Canine interest non-replicating. Timeline tightening in town. Additional turnouts queued for daylight canvas. A calm file is not a cold file. It's a disciplined one. The data aligned cleanly so far. The risk now is pretending clean alignment equals an answer. It doesn't. It only tells you where not to look tomorrow. A small reflection before we move on. In real cases, families live inside these 48 hours for years. The value we can offer is precision. If you've watched searches from the volunteer side, what would you add here? More bodies and wider grids, or fewer people with tighter assignments and better documentation? If a roadside turnout can't tell you where Amy went, the minute hand in town might. Investigators returned to Lander on July 25th with one job: compress the final verified window before she could have driven toward the loop road. The smaller that window, the fewer turnouts to consider, the fewer miles to search, the better chance you stop guessing. In cases like this, time is the only lever strong enough to move the map. They start with known contact points. The morning fitness class establishes a fixed block. Staff and regulars confirm start and end times with enough agreement to mark the board in ink, not pencil. From there, the team walks the day forward in short, careful steps. Errands are retraced. A counter worker at a small print/photo desk recalls a brief conversation about a contest. The shop ledger shows a time notation close enough to matter. That single line tightens the early afternoon. Call attempts to Amy later in the day are logged by hour. Messages that went unanswered set a soft upper bound for when people expected a quick reply and didn't get one. You can learn a lot from ordinary transactions. Paper receipts, if any exist, provide stamps you can actually test against drive time. If a clerk wrote a time by hand, you ask a second employee to confirm the clock they used. You don't force the data to match, you let mismatches guide you to which piece is memory and which is measurement. The rule in small-town timelines is simple: 2 independent points that agree beat 1 vivid recollection every time. Once those minutes are set, the search captain and the lead investigator do the math you can feel in your legs: how long to leave town, how long to reach a series of likely pullouts, and whether a planned out-and-back scouting run fits before dark. The first pass with a general late afternoon produces too many candidate turnoffs. The refined pass with a narrower departure time cuts that list down. Places that looked plausible yesterday fall off the board today because they would require non-existent minutes. Burnt Gulch stays in range, not because it is dramatic, but because it is reachable inside the trimmed window and aligns with a runner's habit of parking where you can step onto a shoulder and start. Witness interviews are treated like instruments with calibration drift. A friend who heard Amy talk about scouting that day supports intent. A casual sighting of a compact car somewhere on the highway doesn't pass the standard unless it's anchored to a landmark and a time the map can use. The team revisits two accounts that almost fit. Almost doesn't carry a grid. If a fisherman says near a scenic turnout, the follow-up tries to pin whether that means one of three specific bends or a dozen. If it stays vague, it stays out. That restraint keeps the investigation coherent for the family and honest for everyone else. Back at the board, the commander draws a tight band around the end of the in-town sequence and the earliest plausible arrival window on the loop road. The space between those bands becomes the new priority zone. Now the assignment sheet reads differently. Canvass adjacent turnouts within that band first, confirm which lots saw after work traffic, ask if anyone remembers a runner mapping distances, look for incidental markers runners sometimes leave, chalk dots, tape, a notebook entry pinned under a wiper. None of those things appear, but the act of asking in the right order matters. It's how you separate a crowded summer day from the one detail that actually touches the case. This is also where language in a file can either help you or hurt you. Write likely too early and it migrates into certain by the next briefing. The investigator's margin notes stay plain, window narrowed by X minutes, secondary turnouts eliminated, Burnt Gulch remains consistent with compressed window. That single consistency point, paired with the absence of contact in the immediate grid, pushes the case away from chasing long-shot turnoffs and toward testing what movement from a reachable pullout could look like if something interrupted it quickly, an encounter near a vehicle, a ride offered, a distraction that drew her a short distance off the road. None of those are conclusions, they're just the scenarios a compressed clock allows. There's a human truth in this kind of work that deserves a line, even in a hard file. Getting the time right is a way to respect the person who disappeared. It tells the family you won't make them relive wild rumors because you were sloppy with a minute hand. In towns like Lander, where neighbors see neighbors every day, precision is its own form of care. The refined window shifts resources. A broader suite becomes a focused canvas. The phone list grows, but only with people tied to places that still make sense. The next day's brief reads cleaner than the last, fewer arrows on the map, more questions with answers that can be checked. The data aligns more tightly now. And yes, sometimes that's the problem, tight alignment can tempt you to believe it ends the case. It doesn't. What it does is build a path you can walk without losing yourself. In a missing person investigation, partners are checked first because access and routine overlap. Fremont County keeps it procedural. The spouse is interviewed early, his day logged from first contact to last, and every point is tested against something independent. It isn't a theory about guilt. It's the way cases move when the clock is tight and the landscape is large. Steve Bechtel reports a climbing day near Du Bois with friends. That is written down as a claim, not as a conclusion. Investigators asked for sequence, departure time, partners' names, approach trail, route choice, when they broke down gear, when they drove back. The point is not to interrogate the sport, it's to generate time anchors you can verify without emotion. Climbing partners confirm the outing. Approximate times line up well enough for the file to mark alibi statements obtained and keep them separate from opinion. In practice, corroboration like this narrows opportunity windows. It does not erase them. The interview stays methodical. Where were you the night before, the morning of, the afternoon? Who saw you? Who spoke to you? Which vehicle did you drive? What fuel stops do you remember? Anything unusual at home? These are standard questions in every jurisdiction. If a lawyer advises declining a polygraph, the report records declined on counsel's advice. That sentence has one job: to capture an event, not to hint at motive. Investigators do request further access, consensual searches, property photos, a review of training logs, anything that might locate Amy's running plans more precisely. When you're missing hard evidence outdoors, you overdocument what you can still reach indoors. A point that becomes public later is that writings, notes, and lyrics draw attention. In any case, a document with violent language is examined and context is requested. The file treats this as background, not as proof. A journal can be art, venting, or worse. On its own, it is none of those in court. What it can do is drive fresh interviews or follow-up searches if the language references places or patterns. The team keeps that line professional to avoid turning a literature review into an investigation by rumor. Phone records in 1997 are limited compared to now, but landline logs and message times still help. Who called whom and when can reinforce the town timeline from earlier chapters and bound the evening hours. If a call to Amy goes unanswered at a time she usually responds, it becomes a soft marker that something has changed. If the spouse's calls and contacts match his stated route and arrival home, that is entered as confirmation. The record must be careful, consistent with is not proofs. The search command weighs whether any of this opens a new physical lead. If a partner knows trailheads better than most, he can point out smaller turnouts runners favor for quick segments, or places where cell coverage fades to nothing. That kind of input can be useful without being accusatory. In towns like Lander, you rely on people who know the hills to keep a search from wasting daylight. The balance is delicate: use knowledge, avoid bias. As days pass without contact, the early scrutiny never disappears, but it recedes behind the operational need to keep looking beyond Burnt Gulch. Deputies revisit the spouse for second-round questions as new tips come in. Do any names sound familiar? Any trucks, old cabins, or pullouts you'd avoid? A careful file logs both the questions and the lack of new leads, because no can be as important as yes when you prune the map. The human part of this chapter is simple. Families are asked to cooperate while living through shock. Most do. Investigators owe them precision in return. Treat the spouse neither as a suspect nor as a bystander. Treat him as a primary witness whose timeline needs to be exact. That is fair to him, fair to Amy, and fair to the searchers who put their boots on the same roads every day. When you don't have a body, the landscape becomes evidence, until weather, traffic, and time erase it. After the first sweeps, investigators step back and ask a narrower question: what physical traces in an outdoor run can survive long enough to matter? The list is short. You look for fibers caught on brush near entry points, small items a runner could drop along a warm-up line, and shoe impressions in pockets of softer soil that weren't trampled by responders. None of those turn up in a way that holds under a second look. That isn't unusual. Mountain roads are busy in July, and the shoulder gets rewritten hourly. The car has already been documented. Now the focus is around the vehicle, hand-height brush, the first 20 yards off the gravel, the places someone would stand to stretch before heading uphill. Technicians do a daylight microscan with simple tools, angled mirrors to peek under ledges, rakes to clear leaf litter in small swaths, envelopes ready for anything that could carry contact DNA. The results are negative or too degraded to keep. Negative results have value. They tell you not to stake the case on the hope of a single fiber. From there, the team evaluates objects commonly found with runners and whether those can guide a second search pass. If a runner used chalk, tape, or a pocket notebook to mark distances for a race route, those could show up near obvious turnback points. No markers are found on the spurs closest to the car, and none are reported by crews working adjacent turnouts inside the refined time window from town. That aligns with what we already know. The vehicle is real, the direction of travel is not. When outdoor forensics won't draw an arrow, you lean harder on time, witnesses, and exclusions. Dog teams get a second shot under different conditions. Handlers revisit likely approaches when the air is cooler and traffic has dropped. A single alert without replication isn't treated as a lead. The file adds those entries because restraint is the only way to keep the search honest. If a scent trail can't repeat, you don't build tomorrow around it. The next angle is retest potential. What, years later, might still speak if preserved correctly. Items from the car are already sealed. Modern labs can sometimes pull touch DNA from surfaces that were once considered hopeless, but chain of custody rules everything. If the initial collection was clean and storage has been stable, a future submission might help eliminate or include someone who had legitimate access. That matters in a case where many people can explain their prints on shared items, but few can explain transfer in the wrong place at the wrong time. Terrain analysis also has a role. Investigators map the microtrails where someone could move a short distance off the road and be hidden from casual view, dips behind cutbanks, brush walls that shield sightlines from passing cars, and quick drop-offs toward drainages. Those spots are walked by small, quiet teams rather than broad volunteer lines. It's slow work designed to find what big grids miss. Nothing turns, but the method is right, targeted, documented, repeatable. There's a human cost to hearing no evidence recovered said out loud. Families hear no hope. That's not what it means. It means the case isn't going to pretend a fiber proves a story it doesn't. Respect for Amy requires accuracy over theatrics. If an outdoor scene can't support a conclusion, the investigation won't invent one. As the chapter closes, the file is cleaner, not richer. The turnout's apron is cleared, the closest spurs rewalked, the collection preserved for any future lab that can say more than today's can. The work now tilts back to people, the tips that mentioned older cabins off the main road, the names that resurfaced after media attention, and the individuals whose histories overlap with this stretch of Wyoming. In a nobody case, that pivot isn't giving up on forensics, it's using them honestly and moving forward. A quick thought for you, if one more resource were available, would you invest it in retesting preserved items with updated DNA methods, or in a targeted walk of 2 off-road structures mentioned in past tips? Once the first sweeps produced no recovery and the clock was narrowed, investigators leaned on public reach. Newspaper stories, TV segments, and later true crime programs carried one clear ask: if you were on the Loop Road the afternoon or evening of July 24, 1997, bring dates, places, and anything you recorded. Tips came in waves: roadside memories, old photos developed years late, a camcorder clip showing traffic near a turnout. Each was handled the same way: log the caller, pin a time, name a place, compare against the verified window. Most led nowhere, a few earned site checks. The file stayed disciplined because the language stayed disciplined, consistent with no confirmation, negative results logged. That restraint protected the timeline we built and kept the case from chasing itself. Public attention also sustained the case when physical leads ran thin. Communities forget details unless they're invited to remember. Coverage gave people a reason to look again in attic boxes and glove compartments, to redate a snapshot, to ask whether a coworker's story fits a map we can actually test. It helped without pretending to solve. Then came the legal step many outside the system confused with closure. In 2004, a court declared Amy Roe Bechtel legally dead. That order belongs to civil life, estates, insurance, the paperwork families can't avoid. It does not identify an offender, and it does not shut a criminal file. Fremont County's case remained open. The declaration changed forms, not facts. What did change, slowly, was capacity. Items preserved early, sealed correctly, logged properly, could be reconsidered as labs improved. Touch DNA, low template work, and better contamination controls created the possibility of future exclusions or inclusions. Retesting isn't a twist ending, it's diligence. If it could tighten a circle or clear an innocent overlap, it was worth the patience. Across the years, one principle kept the narrative honest: precision is a form of care. The car at Burnt Gulch was a discovery point, not proof of a route. The first 48 hours set boundaries we never bent to satisfy a theory. The spouse scrutiny was procedural, corroborated where possible, and never converted into presumption. Outdoor forensics were used where they could speak, preserved where they might speak later, and never dressed up to say what they couldn't. That's how you respect a missing person and the people who love her. If you have something real, an image with a readable landmark, a dated note that fixes a turnout, a memory anchored to a receipt, hold onto the original and contact authorities. Small, verifiable details move cases. Stories without clocks do not. We end where the facts end. On July 24, 1997, near Lander, Wyoming, Amy Roe Bechtel, 24, disappeared while planning a run on the Loop Road. Her white Toyota Tercel was later found at a turnout. She was not. Despite extensive searches, interviews, and years of tips, no one has been charged, and her remains have not been found. As of November 12, 2025, the case is unsolved. The door isn't closed, it's carefully held open, waiting for the one detail that can be proved. I'll leave you with this: precision isn't cold, it's how we honor Amy. When facts are scarce, we protect the ones we have, listen twice, and speak once. If you run, hike, or travel these roads, record times and places. Small notes can change a case. What mattered most here? The clock, the road, or the people who kept looking? Tell me where you're watching from, or why this didn't work for you. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe to follow the next investigation. And if a dated photo or turnout name rings a bell, contact authorities, and keep the original.